Om Bhadram Karne Bhishrunuyama Devaha Bhadram Pashye Makshabhiryajatraha Sthirairangai Shtushtuvagum Sastanubihi Vyashema Devahitan Yadayuhu Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om, O gods, may we hear with our ears what is auspicious. O ye adorable ones, may we see with our eyes what is auspicious. May we sing praises to ye and enjoy with strong limbs and body the life allotted to us by the gods. Om, peace, peace, peace. This is the story of two frogs. The story of a father and a son frog. One fine day, they were looking for food, and then they jumped into a bucket of milk inadvertently. Now, as the sides were too slippery, they were unable to get out. They decided to swim around the bucket. All of a sudden, Father Frog said, "Son, I'm getting tired of swimming." Full of energy and vigor, the son replied, "Let's keep swimming, Father. I'm sure something is going to happen. Please, keep trying. Keep swimming, keep paddling." Another couple of hours passed. After a while, the father said, "Swimming is of no use anymore. We are going to drown." The son frog looked in awe and replied, "Hold on, Father, keep swimming. Something is going to happen." And they continued paddling for some time. Again, after a while, the father frog said, "Son, there is no use. I'm really exhausted now." Turned upside down and died in the milk. But the son frog kept on paddling. Minutes later, the frog started feeling the milk was getting solid beneath his feet. And paddling was getting harder and harder, but kept going to realize after a while that he had turned the milk into butter. He then jumped out of the bucket. Mastering it through, enduring until the end. Good morning, everyone. Did you sleep in, or did you just decide to make up your mind and catching up again with your spiritual practice this morning? I got a message yesterday. A friend of mine was laughing. "Hey, Swami, now you're famous. You are all in the Facebook page. It says that encouraging people to do japan for an extra hour." And I thought it was very appropriate or appropriate because there is no other way. It's a matter of understanding. It's a matter of making up our minds and finally say, is this what I want in my life or not? What kind of life do I want? So, are you ready for a spiritual workout? You know, some of you must be thinking, well, that was a nice story, Swami, but, I thought maybe the advice should have come from the old man rather than from the son. Or again, maybe the son should have carried his father on his shoulder. Well, we all like, happy endings in stories, but this is the hard reality. I heard this story 25 years ago. And I still get the same feeling when it gets to the end of it. The hope, the optimism, the energetic enthusiasm of the young who wants to believe to the degree of certainty that something is going to happen. On the other hand, it looks like as we get older, life disappointments and frustrations make us lose our young spirit with its natural ability to endure. It's also true that as we grow older, we start losing muscle mass, and to prevent that, we need to work out more often. We all experience in our life hard times, times where we don't know why things are just harder, when things are overwhelming and difficult, more than you feel you can take, when there is a state of confusion and you don't know what to do with it. And what's even worse, when you lose faith. What happens to your spiritual muscles? Do your spiritual muscles grow bigger and stronger, or do they go flaccid or atrophied? But we can. Can we really muscle it through with weak muscles, is the question. We could do it. Sometimes we try. It's just really hard. We all know by experience how strenuous it is all of a sudden to run for 12 minutes or even the 7 minutes workout that we do, or some of us do every day. If we stop for a while, how hard it is to start again. The thing is, we can't really work our way through. We can't really muscle it through if our spiritual muscle is weak. If our spiritual muscle is weak. Simple. Now, first things first. We have to build our spiritual muscle. We have to grow stronger and be fit so that when the winter comes, so that when the clouds approach, so that when hard times happen, or when God decides to test our faith, we need to show Him that we can persevere. We need to show Him that with Him we can go through storms, thunderstorms, and tropical storms. We just had the Florence on the East Coast a few months ago. We know they are happening, these catastrophes. And when they happen, every once in a while, with or without our notice, we need to be ready for them. Now, it's clear that when we say spiritual muscle, we know we don't mean our physical muscle, but they both work the same way, really. We exercise to improve our heart health, and we lift weights to build and tone our muscles. The spiritual muscle grows the same way. You start working it out slowly until it gets stronger and stronger. You start with small steps. What are those small steps? Well, we have to invite God to our lives. Yes, we have to invite God. Now let's talk about a little bit of God, about God and what God is. This, of course, takes for granted that we have or we want to have a life led by the Spirit. I think here is where we should start by making this decision in our life. What is a spiritual life really? Do we know what it is? Anyone here?
Ethical life?
Ethical life, yes, but it's more than that. Spiritual life is supported by ethical life, but there is something else, something higher.
100% faith in God's, whatever is given to you, you just go through it, because it is given by God.
Given by God, faith, trust.
That our life is an expression of our relationship with God.
Nice, very good, I like it. To understand what spiritual life is, we have to first understand the other types of life. Traditionally, our scriptures and teachers talk about 4 main ways of living in this world. Worldly life, a life centered on the body. Its goal is earning money, and enjoyment of sensual pleasures. We pretty much need security and enough money to have fun. Then we have the intellectual life. This way of life is centered on the intellect. Its goal is gaining knowledge, teaching, writing books, or even giving lectures. Intellectual life. Then we have a conventional religious life, which is a life centered on faith in gods and goddesses, rituals, festivals, etc. The goal is a good life and material prosperity by the grace of God. The 3 ways of life mentioned just now constitute what we call pravritti marga. Have you heard this Sanskrit term? Those who are familiar with the Sanskrit, the aim of this path is the attainment of what we call abhyudaya, or prosperity, which includes the fulfillment of the 3 values or goals of life called dharma, artha, and kama. Those who are Hindus, they might be familiar, and old-timers, with this terminology. I will explain this later in the Q&A. But the 3 ways mentioned above are impermanent and cause suffering, and they make a person a slave of his sense organs. Again, the 3 ways mentioned are impermanent and cause suffering and make a person a slave of his sense organs. These 3 ways also cause bondage to the cycle of birth and death. We call it samsara in Sanskrit. Now there is a 4th way of life, known as a spiritual life, which belongs to what we call in Sanskrit nivritti marga. These are 2 impulses in the mind. Pravritti marga says go outside, which is very natural. And nivritti marga suggests the opposite. Now let's talk a little bit about a spiritual life. Adhyatmika jivana is called in Sanskrit. This way of life is centered on what we call the Atman, the capital self. Since the Atman of who we really are, the individual self, is a part of the Paramatman, or Supreme Self, we also call it, God. Spiritual life may also be regarded as a God-centered life. A God-centered life. The goal is mukti, freedom from this samsara. It gives man eternal life, eternal happiness, and supreme knowledge. It also frees man from selfishness and egoism, such a liberated person loves to serve all. He can help it. It just flows from within. He loves to serve others. Therefore, a spiritual life is a way of life centered on the Atman, or God. This is Nivritti Marga, where our goal is freedom from the forces of nature. Freedom from the forces of nature, where the goal is to reunite with our real true self and experience constant and everlasting peace. That's all we want. Constant and everlasting peace in our life. Swami Vivekananda says, here are two Sanskrit words. The one is pravritti, which means revolving towards, and the other is nivritti, which means revolving away. The revolving towards is what we call the world, the I and mine. It includes all those things which we are always enriching that me. By wealth and money and power, and name and fame, and which are of a grasping nature, always tending to accumulate everything in one center, that center being myself. That is pravritti, the natural tendency of every human being. Is that wrong, Swami? What are you going to do? It's natural. Taking everything from everywhere and heaping it around one center, that center being man's own sweet self. When this tendency begins to break, it is nivritti, or going away from, that begins morality and true spirituality. Nivritti is the fundamental basis of all morality and spirituality, and the very perfection of it is entire self-abnegation, readiness to sacrifice mind and body and everything for another being. That's what happens when you realize or have the experience of your own reality in this very life. You just love. Love for love's sake. Now, how do we get there? That's the point. Even though we just define a spiritual life as a life centered on God, where we invite God in our life as a symbol of the highest, that universal consciousness that witnesses it all, the one who has and who can see the whole picture, the one who knows what's really going on, we feel that our life is a mixture of both material and spiritual activities, where the goal is to live a less self-centered life. Now, this sounds more realistic for most of you. A more unselfish life, unselfish love, and service to all. So now we are coming down a little bit. Are we compromising? Well, not really. I mean, we go baby steps. All we need is that yearning to go to the ultimate and achieve that freedom. Until then, our life is a mixture of both material and spiritual activities. but never without missing the goal. Never without missing that goal in life. Again, our life is a mixture of both material and spiritual activities. Even though we may consider our spiritual life a priority, still, as human beings, we cannot avoid our daily activities and responsibilities. It is just what it is. It is our life. It feels like these two activities are going side by side, parallel. But in reality, these actually go hand by hand. In our case, we are monks. We don't engage too much in material activities the way you do. But still, we have to go to Trader Joe's on a Smart and Final. Go shopping. The other day, someone was surprised that we received a package from Amazon's. And he was like, oh, monks buy on Amazon's. That's the way we do it today. So should that be considered worldly? Well, our life is a mix. And we need to embrace both and spiritualize everything. Here it comes. What is truly important, whether we are able to understand the importance of both in our life, giving the right value to both. Abhyudaya, material prosperity, and nishrayasa, spiritual prosperity, should go hand by hand. The goal is to integrate them, to make them one. The goal is indeed to spiritualize our life. And we do that by inviting God, by inviting the ultimate to be one with us. But if we observe our life often, if we are not careful, our priorities get confused. And we seem to forget that one should support the other. Sometimes we lose balance of our priorities and we seem to put or add more on the side of the material activities played of the scale. Our material activities take so much of our time. Our energy and our thinking is so misled that we are unable to manage our priorities properly. Is it clear? Does it make sense? It happens to us. Thousands of years ago, the ancient rishis, the wise men, they said that man will be so absorbed in what we call yoga-kshema, engrossed in the search for prosperity and welfare, that the scriptures had to find out some method to remind us once in a while that these two go parallel. That we have to give equal importance to both. There is a verse in chapter number 2, verse number 45. Traigunya nishaya veda, nistraigunya bhavarjuna, nirdvando nitvasatvasto, niryoga kshema atmavan. Traigunya vishaya veda, nistraigunya bhavarjuna, nirdvando nityasatvasto, niryoga kshema atmavan. The Vedas deal with these three forces of nature, called the gunas. Oh, Arjuna. You know what the gunas are? I'm not planning to give a talk on gunas today, but let me briefly tell you. So these are the three forces that bind the soul and force the soul to act in this world. These gunas, as manifested in the physical world, are what we may call activity or rajas, inertness or tamas, and the equilibrium of both. We call it sattva. You must free yourself, says Lord Krishna, from these three gunas and from the pair of opposites, ever balanced. Abide in pure sattva, poise your mind in tranquility, free from the thought of getting and keeping, and be established in the Atman, the capital self, always. The Bhagavad Gita chapter 9, verse number 22 says, Ananyas chintayanto mam ye jana paryupasate tesham nitya viyuktanam yogakshema bahamyaham. But if a man will worship me, the capital self, and meditate upon me with an undistracted mind, devoting every moment to me, I shall supply all his needs and protect his possessions from loss. Sounds good to me. Those who, meditating on me as non-separate, worship me in all beings, to them, thus, ever zealously engaged, I carry what they lack and preserve what they already have. To those who meditate on me as their only goal. Ananya means non-separate, looking upon the Supreme Being as non-separate from their own self. It also means without any other thought. Those who worship me, capital M, in all beings and never entertain any other thought, to those who do not see anything as separate from themselves, the Lord secures to them gain and safety. In Vairagya Shatakam, 100 verses on renunciation, there is a verse, the 43. It goes, daily, with the rising and setting of the sun, life shortens, and time is not felt on account of affairs heavily burdened with manifold activities. Neither is fear produced at beholding birth, death, old age, and suffering. Alas, the world has become mad by drinking the stupefying wine of delusion. Seeing even the same night to be ever following the same day, in vain do creatures run on their worldly course. Perseveringly and busy with various activities set ongoing secretly by individual mental resolves, Alas, through infatuation, we do not feel ashamed at being thus befooled by this samsara or life with occupations in which the same particulars repeat themselves. We don't seem to learn from our experience. We keep doing the same and the same until we wake up to something higher. Don't ever waste a day. Don't ever waste a day. As we get older, we start thinking about time a little different. Half of my life is gone. When you're in your 20s, you don't think too much about time. And you know, there is something funny about time. We all of us, get 24 hours every day. Some of us make the most of it in a very fruitful way. Some of us simply waste our time. It is important that you feel that your time has been fully well utilized. There is something else. Once it goes by, you never get it back. Simply flies away. How tragic it is. Again, our scriptures compare us with actors on a stage. Now a child for a while, and then a youth of erotic ways. A destitute now for a while, and then very wealthy. Just like an actor, man makes at the end of his role, when diseased in all limbs by age and wrinkled all over the body, his exit behind the scene that veils the abode of death. We call that Yama. And we don't seem to realize that. Time indeed flies away so fast. We were kids, young adults just yesterday. All our problems and what was a big deal then, it now seems nothing. And then, diseased and wrinkled, the exit behind the scenes, behind the big curtain, awaits for us to take us somewhere else, God knows. Therefore, we should remind ourselves all the time the value of time, the value of leading a spiritual life, and give equal, if not higher importance to our spiritual pursuits. Now, how do we build our spiritual muscle? Never put off for tomorrow what you can do today. Stop procrastinating. Stop procrastinating. Understand what's truly important in your life. Understand the value of life and what is truly important in your life. You should realize how important are your spiritual practices, so much so that without them, you can't simply go anywhere. You cannot start your day. It's an everyday practice. And this everyday practice is a way of life. Is it getting clearer what a spiritual life is? It shouldn't be a practice that you just pick up every 6 months, just when you remember how important it was for you to have it in your life, or when it's too late, when your muscles are already very weak. As long as we are in this world, as long as we are engaged in this world, as long as this body remains, we have to engage in some kind of external spirituality. This helps us having some kind of physical or external discipline. These help us having some kind of physical or external discipline. After all, our entire life is a ritual already. Don't we have breakfast at the same time every morning, or try, or go jogging, go for a run? Early morning, external disciplines are essential. A spiritual bath is as important as a physical bath. Like daily meditation, offering flowers to your altar, offering light or incense, a spiritual walk, but without listening to the news. Maybe do something inspiring, something else. Read some spiritual verses from the scriptures, or simply read some inspiring book. We should be all the time aware of this. Pratyaham pratyavekshetam narascharitamatmanah kinnu me pashuvistulyam kinnu satpurushairapi in Sanskrit. Daily we human beings should introspect and see whether our behavior has been as truthful humans should behave, or whether we have been behaving like animals do. Again, daily we human beings should introspect and see whether our behavior has been as truthful humans should behave, or whether we have been behaving like animals do. Without introspection, we can never see our own mistakes. Without contemplation, without introspection, we cannot see our own mistakes. As we err without any introspection, we will be unable to make efforts to correct ourselves. Hence, for those who aspire for spiritual growth, introspection is as essential as breathing. Now, are we leading a spiritual life? Are we committed to this point of introspecting all the time? Whether I'm behaving like a human, divine being, or like a human animal, or animal? This is essential. As one becomes free from mistakes, the mirror of one's mind becomes clearer and clearer. When it becomes totally clear, one is able to realize oneself as the self, the capital self. Every day one should introspect one's own behavior and see what are the qualities within oneself that resemble animals or pashu characteristics. And what are the qualities that resemble the qualities of a noble person? In Sanskrit, satpurusha. Every day I have to look at myself, how much I practice, what I read, what I study, what is the gap between what I live and what I know or seem to know. What is the gap between the ideal and the reality in my life? How much I am expressing what I know. If my life is led in a coherent way. Am I being honest with myself and the lifestyle I chose to have? Am I being consistent with my values? What is the state of my mind? Is it in a state of bewildering confusion? Am I behaving like a satpurusha, a person with noble qualities? Or like an animal, a pashu? We should ask ourselves these questions daily. Are you willing to do that? We should know what is the extent of my progress, considering my standard. We should be mindful. We should be mindful, being aware of our thoughts, words, emotions all the time. We have to become accustomed to be we have become accustomed. It's not imperative. We have become accustomed to be totally mechanical when it comes to our thoughts. A lot of time is again wasted in meaningless thoughts and vain arguments. What do we need? A thought-word discipline. One goes with the other. If thought discipline is non-existent, our words will follow the same fate, and so our actions. There is no special time for this particular sadhana or spiritual practice. It goes throughout the day. Don't blame anybody. Don't blame God. We have to commit to practice. The more we practice, the stronger we get. To invite yourself to have higher thoughts, to invite yourself to dwell on Vedantic thoughts will help you throughout the day. Now, how can you do that? You can study the scriptures, get inspiration from Mahatmas, great souls, reading their lives, their teachings, life experiences. We have to assert ourselves as children of immortal bliss. Children of immortal bliss. We have to assert ourselves as children of immortal bliss. To spend time with your higher selves should be a priority in your life. We are never going to experience the power we need in our life if we are not willing to work out our spiritual muscle. We are never going to experience the power we need in our life if we are not willing to work out our spiritual muscle. We are never going to experience the energetic enthusiasm in our life if we are not willing to work out our spiritual muscle. If we really want to muscle it through, we need to start working out our spiritual muscle right now. And I have 15 minutes left. Just the way we use weights in physical activity, we need to strengthen our spiritual muscles to make positive and definite change in our life, and particularly in our attitude towards God. Where way down deep inside us, we make up our minds that we are going to go all the way through with God. There is a popular saying in Spanish, happens to be my mother tongue. A Dios rogando y con el mazo dando. Strike with thy rod while thou beg to thy God. Pray to God, but continue to row to the shore. God helps those who help themselves. That's what it is. We have to work out our spiritual muscle by having a relationship with God. It's easier this way. We have to work out our spiritual muscle by having a relationship with God. After all, it's Sri Krishna's message from the Bhagavad Gita. Bottom line, have a relationship with God. Think of me. Constantly remember me. We should be able to be in constant communion and constant prayer and turn into Him everything, for everything. Sri Ramakrishna used to look upon God as Mother. He used to pray. This is beautiful. O Mother, ever blissful as thou art, do not deprive thy worthless child of bliss. My mind knows nothing but thy lotus feet. The king of death scowls at me terribly. Tell me, Mother, what shall I say to him? It was my heart's desire to sail my boat across the ocean of this mortal life. It was your decision. O Mother, O Durga, with thy name upon my lips, I never dreamed that thou wouldst drown me here in the dark waters of this shoreless sea. Both day and night I swim among its waves, chanting thy saving name, yet even so there is no end, O Mother, to my grief. If I am drowned this time in such a plight, no one will ever chant thy name again. How about that? Why not? That's the way. If we can't, at least we should corner God. Who is going to chant your name if you don't help me out here? Who? I love it. We have to have an emotional relationship with any form or idea of God to avoid anxiety. We have to have an emotional relationship with any form of God to avoid anxiety and to accept whatever comes in our life. To accept whatever comes in our life. Disappointments are just God's way of saying, I've got something better. Be patient. Live life. Have faith. When something bad happens, you have three choices. You can either let it define you, let it destroy you, or let it strengthen you. You all know the serenity prayer. God, give me strength and serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Oh Lord, let me not be anxious about the future. Instead, let me live in the present, aware of myself. Oh Lord, let me accept what comes to me as prasadha, what comes to me as your gift. With this strength derived from our relationship with God, we will avoid reactions, anxiety, and worry. There you have it. With this strength derived from our relationship with God, we will avoid reactions, anxiety, and worry. Because it's all for my own good, after all. Prevention is better than cure, the saying goes. It is better to try to keep a bad thing from happening than it is to fix the bad thing once it has happened. Muscling it through, enduring until the end with God. Enduring until the end with God, practicing patience and perseverance. God, patience, and perseverance. And keep working out. Patience and regular practice is the whole secret of spiritual realization. Patience and spiritual and regular practice is the whole secret of spiritual realization. Do not be in a hurry in a spiritual life. Do your utmost and leave the rest to God. Now I have 5 minutes to share with you some tips. Tips of advice for a good way of life. You ready? 35. Number 1. By the way, I'm going to post this on Facebook. because I'm pretty sure you would like to have this. Number 1, pray. 2, go to bed on time. Get up on time so you can start the day unrushed. 4, say no to projects that won't fit into your life schedule or that will compromise your mental health. Just say no. 5, delegate tasks to capable others. 6, simplify your life. Stop adding. 7, less is more. Although 1 is often not enough, 2 are often too many. 8, allow extra time to do things and to get to places. Take 1 day at a time. Number 10, separate worries from concerns. If a situation is a concern, find out what God would have you do and let go of anxiety. If you can't do anything about a situation, forget it. 11, live within your own budget. Don't use credit cards for ordinary purchases. Have backups, an extra car key in your wallet, an extra house key buried in the garden, extra stamps, etc. Number 13, KMS, keep your mouth shut. This single piece of advice can prevent an enormous amount of trouble. An enormous amount of trouble. You know. 14, do something for the kid in you every day. Carry a good book with you and read while waiting in line. 16, get enough rest. Eat right. Get organized so everything has its place. 19, listen to a tape or an MP3 while driving that can help improve your quality of life. Podcasts. 20, write down thoughts and inspirations. Write them down. 21, every day, find time to be alone. Find some time. Having problems? Talk to God on the spot. Try to nip small problems in the bed. Don't wait until it's time to go to bed and try to pray. 23, make friends with godly people. 24, keep a folder of favorite scriptures on hand. Remember that the shortest bridge between despair and hope is often a good thank you, God. 25, 26, laugh. 27, laugh some more. 28, take your work seriously, but not yourself at all. Develop a forgiving attitude. Most people are doing the best they can. 30, be kind to unkind people. They probably need it the most. 31st, sit on your ego. 32, talk less, listen more. 33, slow down. Remind yourselves that you are not the general manager of the universe. And at last, 35, every night before bed, think of one thing you are grateful for. that you have never been grateful for before. The moment you accept what troubles you, you've been given the door you've been given. The moment you accept, this is a beautiful poem written by Rumi. The moment you accept what troubles you, you've been given, the door will open. Welcome difficulty as a familiar comrade. Joke with torment brought by the friend. Sorrows are the rags of old clothes and jackets that serve to cover, then are taken off. That undressing and the naked body underneath is the sweetest. That undressing and the naked body underneath is the sweetness that comes after grief. Earth you embrace becomes joy. Thank you. Well, I will read this again. The moment you accept what troubles you've been given, the door will open. Welcome difficulty as a familiar comrade. Joke with torment brought by the friend. Sorrows are the rags of old clothes and jackets that serve to cover, then are taken off. That undressing and the naked body underneath is the sweetness that comes after grief. The hurt you embrace becomes joy. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om, that outer world is Purna, full of divine consciousness. This inner world is Purna, full of divine consciousness. From Purna comes from Purna. From Purna comes Purna. From the fullness of divine consciousness, the world is manifested. Taking Purna from Purna, Purna indeed remains because divine consciousness is non-dual and infinite. Om, peace, peace, peace. Thank you for coming.